Hello from Ballistakos, Hamburg. Today we want to introduce you to a machine again, namely a classic dual circuit with E61 brew group, the Mechanika Max from ECM. Have fun with it. She has been with us in the course for 8 months now, and we think it's a nice time to take a closer look and really test her thoroughly, and the Mechanik Max from ECM. And for those who want to learn a bit more about ECM and especially take a look behind the scenes, meaning to see how such machines are manufactured, I recommend our film as we visited the company ECM in the summer of 2024. We took a look at the production and had a long discussion, especially about these brew groups with the owner. I found that super interesting. We will gladly link it for you. Just a quick note about this brew group, as you will have seen it quite often, and you will definitely have heard the name E61 more than once. This brew group was developed by the company Vima and was launched on the market in 1961. And that's why it's called E61. It is a classic brew group that has been used by most manufacturers in the same way for over 60 years in many classic machines. ECM has developed a slightly unique shape and incorporates it into their machines. Rocket, for example, is also a manufacturer that has developed its own shape. But the majority of these brew groups are essentially the same, and as far as I know, these brew groups are manufactured worldwide in only 3 factories. This brew group has several advantages, namely that it has an incredible amount of mass, which simply means that it has inertia once it is heated up, resulting in relatively low temperature fluctuations. And that is an advantage when brewing espresso, because you can taste whether a machine's temperature drops during the espresso extraction or if it remains stable, but we will come back to that later. Because there are a few very interesting things that the company ECM has incorporated there, which significantly improve temperature stability. In principle, the Mechanik Max is a classic dual boiler with an E61 brew group, but only in principle, because it has integrated and changed a few things that set it apart from some other machines. The first thing that sets it apart is the bell that has been installed here. And ECM developed its own bell, which is the part that sits inside here, and also had it patented. This bell is made of stainless steel. Most other bells are usually chrome-plated. And it can happen that this chrome slowly flakes off and may end up in your coffee. With the bell from ECM, this is not the case, but what distinguishes the machine from most or many other machines is not inside the brew group, but in front of it, meaning in the housing of the machine. It is always about trying to consistently achieve a high temperature stability during extraction. And for that, it has a few very clever controls built in, which we will explain to you in detail later. But first, let's talk about the external features of the machine. It is a real heavyweight, 23.5 kilos. This has an advantage. I always find it nice when machines do not slide back and forth on the tabletop when you lock in the portafilter. And with this machine, that cannot happen. Furthermore, it is not exactly the smallest machine, as it has a very, very large water tank, which we will get to shortly, as well as a rotary pump. And those who know rotary pumps know that they are inherently very large. Therefore, it has a width of 27.5 cm, a height of 44.5 cm, and a depth of 40.5 cm without the portafilter. And the stainless steel boiler is not exactly the smallest either, as it has a volume of approximately 1.9 liters. However, this has advantages, as you have a lot of power in the machine, not only in terms of steam, but also in terms of espresso extraction, because, as mentioned, it is always about achieving the highest possible temperature stability. And with a classic dual boiler system with only one boiler, it is of course advantageous if this one is particularly large. Of course, this also has a small disadvantage, namely the size and mass of this machine is reflected in the heating time. It takes 25 minutes. For a classic dual boiler with an E61 brew group, that is not even long. There are some machines that take up to 42 minutes before they can even extract the first espresso. With 25 minutes, we are actually still on the good side. However, in the future, it seems that things will change regarding the heating time of classic E61 brew groups. For those interested, as mentioned, we had a long conversation with Michael Haug in our video about the company ECM because ECM has released a machine, the Synchronica 2, which is ready for use in just 6 to 8 minutes. There are heating elements built into the brew group, so the brew group, which weighs around 4 kilos or even a bit more, is heated up faster, because the brew group itself is the main problem when it comes to heating. But not only ECM is now incorporating these heating elements into the E61 brew groups, Rocker, for example, is a manufacturer, and there seem to be more and more manufacturers replicating exactly the same thing. Another very generously designed part is the water tank. It has a volume of 3 liters, which is almost extraordinary. However, you have the advantage with the Mechanik Max of being able to connect it to a direct water supply. For those planning their kitchen, I always recommend that if you have a fixed spot, simply install a direct water connection or plan for it so you can connect your machines. The water tank itself is accessible from the back. You can remove the entire cup tray and now access the water tank from above. At the same time, the cup tray here is heated by the boiler itself, which pre-warms the cups. And regarding the water tank, we have a little tip. You will certainly clean it from time to time, and you have a small magnet on the side. And this magnet is a float that moves up and down depending on how much water you have in the tank. If it gets a bit misaligned or you don't install it correctly after cleaning, the machine will indicate that it has no water left and it simply won't work. So, just make sure to install this magnet properly. If you haven't connected the machine to the direct water supply, it will indicate on this display here when your tank is empty. However, you can still pull your last espresso, thank goodness. I think that's a small advantage. And another advantage of the water tank is the filter holder. Because ECM and Profitec are among the first companies to have thought more deeply about the topic of water, and they have been searching for a proper filter. Not only affects the hardness of the water, but also controls the taste through alkalinity. And they found this filter here from Brita. It's called Brita Intensa. And all machines from ECM and Profitec have this special holder. This is a filter that, as far as I know, was developed for a fully automatic machine and fits in almost no machines. There should still be one machine on the market that also has this connection. However, if you buy filters for it, you need to be careful about which one you buy. Because there are 2 different ones. They look almost identical, but they have a slightly different holder down here. There is a filter that has this slightly larger holder and a filter that has a slightly smaller hole here. Basically, one can say that the machine is built extremely high quality. High quality materials have been used, not just thin sheets, but a lot of stainless steel. The edges here are not just bent, but they are welded and polished. It stands there like a noble old warhorse, but with incredibly intelligent technology behind it. For us, it is a beautiful blend of classic and modern, meaning a classic, beautiful, noble exterior combined with modern intelligence, technology that is behind it. You can simply remove the drip tray from the front, and as I mentioned earlier, all the edges are not just bent, but they are properly welded and also ground down. The whole thing is made of high-quality stainless steel. Here you can also see the housing. It's all stainless steel, and that makes a big difference. And one of the gimmicks that I find particularly nice is the holder for your blind filter. Because the ECM machines always have this small receptacle here at the front, the drip tray itself is designed to be sufficiently large. It's not huge, but it holds about 800 milliliters. It doesn't have a float to show you when it is about to overflow. But through this large grid, you can wonderfully look inside and see when you have too much water in it. And what I also find quite important in this context is the distance between the drip tray and the portafilter. This simply determines which cups you can place underneath. And due to the design of the E61 brew group, we have a distance of 9.5 centimeters here. This means you can also place larger cups underneath. And with that, let's move on to the included accessories. A double spout portafilter is included as standard. It is nicely heavy, wonderfully balanced. As far as I know, IMS filters are installed. You also get a second portafilter with a spout. Then you also have a tamper included. I don't find it that great. It feels great in the hand, but personally it's a bit too flat for me, depending on how much you put in your basket or whether you have a larger basket or not. Sometimes it sits a bit too deep and you don't quite feel whether you're tilting or not, whether you're tamping at an angle or not, but it's basically a very nice, well-suited tamper. Then you also have a small brush included. And what else is included is this connection here for the direct water supply. So everything is delivered completely. The portafilter size is of course a classic Varema E61 size, meaning 58 millimeters, so you have an incredible selection. For example, you have access to a wide variety of portafilter tampers, distributor tools, WDT tools and so on. The pump that is built into the machine is, as I mentioned earlier, a rotary pump, and rotary pumps have various advantages. First of all, they are incredibly durable, as are these types of machines. With good care, they simply cannot break. We have the original Varema E61 as a commercial machine in our house, and it dates back to 1964. One of the parts that need to be replaced from time to time are pumps, specifically when it comes to vibration pumps. They are relatively small and subjected to quite a high level of stress. In contrast, rotary pumps last virtually indefinitely, and they also have the advantage of being nice and quiet. A special feature of this machine is somewhat hidden behind this display here, namely the PID control. You can set when it should remind you that it needs to be cleaned. You can set the days of the week when it should be cleaned. You can set when it should remind you, you can set the time, you can vary all sorts of things. For this, ECM has provided a detailed guide on their YouTube channel that is very easy to understand in English. Through this PID control, you can also set a pre-infusion, that is the special part, and in two ways. You have a passive and an active pre-infusion. And this ultimately differs based on which water connection you have applied to the machine. In other words, have you connected it to the fixed water connection, or are you using the water tank? Here on this chart you can see how the pre-infusion affects the extraction. Normally we see the set temperature here, the temperature that we have individually set, namely either as the temperature of the boiler or as the temperature of the extraction. That is, the water that comes out of the brew head. Now the machine has a small but intelligent feature. It has what is called a smart HX control built in. In other words, it has not only a temperature sensor installed, which is located in the boiler or in the area of the boiler, but it also has a second temperature sensor installed in the supply to the Tomsius brew group. And the special thing about it is that using these two temperature values that it measures continuously, it ultimately adjusts the water temperature. This means that the machine is capable of controlling the water temperature during the extraction. Initially, we approached the machine in a very classic way with our test protocol. In other words, we set our desired temperature because we have a PED control. Then we conducted our 10 measurements. And in doing so, we found that the machine has classic deviations in temperature, as is typical for an E61 machine. Not dramatic, it's always around 1 to 1.5 degrees, so it's absolutely within the normal range. Since we found that the machine, especially at the beginning, is a bit too hot in the first seconds, typically around 61, we have varied the intermediate flashes that we usually do before an extraction. That means we started with 2 seconds, then we moved to 5 seconds, and then we continued with 8 seconds. But we still found that the temperature is not quite as perfect as we actually wanted it to be. It has changed a bit. Here you can see these 3 protocols that we implemented, or rather the 3 changes that we tried. We have partially changed our protocol so that we no longer wait 45 seconds between the extractions, but have extended this period to 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes. And that has already made a significant change. This means that if you want to work manually, just give the machine a little time between the extractions you want to make. However, the machine has, as I mentioned before, a small special feature. It has this second temperature sensor with which it can control or calculate the temperature and accordingly manage the heating in the boiler. And additionally, ECM, I believe about a year or a year and a half ago, I don't remember exactly, integrated the Flash Advisor. Flash Advisor means that the machine simply calculates the current temperature between these 2 temperatures, which would occur during extraction. Up here you see the 3 lines that indicate that the machine is currently too hot. And that is also the reason why one always does a flash before the actual extraction. So we let a little water run out until the machine indicates that it is ready for use. And as soon as the machine reaches the right temperature after the flash, it indicates this to you through this ready display. So now you can simply extract and have the right temperature. Similarly, it indicates to you when the water temperature it needs has not yet been reached. Then you have these 3 lines down here. And in the end, we basically threw our protocol out the window and said we will stick to what the machine tells us with the Flash Advisor. In other words, we oriented ourselves with the intervals, with the time intervals and the flash according to what the machine tells us. And behold, the machine maintains the temperature very, very accurately during the extraction. This means that with the help of the flash advisor, you can assume that the machine delivers a very, very accurate extraction temperature throughout the entire extraction range, and not just at the beginning or the end. And not only in terms of temperature stability does the Mechanika Max have a good value, but also in terms of power consumption. Until your first double shot press start, you only consume 0.5 meachas, 2.52 kilowatt hours, and until your first cappuccino, meaning frothing milk, you only consume 0.265 kilowatt hours. And now the machine has a little special feature. If you find that the temperature arriving at the portafilter when the water is released does not match the temperature you have set, this is called an offset, meaning the difference between the two temperatures. You can adjust the offset via this control here, through the PD control. And this is something that very few machines have. You have to disassemble machines and adjust inside. If you haven't really dealt with it and are not familiar with it, let a professional handle it. So, not everyone has the opportunity to get a measuring portafilter. And it is also a relatively expensive undertaking. But there is a nice option. We have already made a film about it. Because you have this little screw on the E61 brew groups, and you can install a thermometer in this screw. There is a thermometer from Geisinger that you can simply screw in. And with that, you can really check very precisely what temperature reaches. For those who are interested, I will link the film. Then you can take a closer look at the whole thing. You even have the option to determine which temperature sensor the machine should use to measure the temperature. And accordingly, you can prioritize how you use the machine. For example, should it heat up faster, or should it brew without needing to flash beforehand? You can set all of this through this PID control.
So, and now I've talked so much that I think it's time to drink an espresso and try it out. We have already set up our grinder. At the moment, the machine is still a bit too hot. As you can see, it has a very, very nice shower built in here. Now it shows us that it is ready, and in the meantime we can make our espresso. So, now it is already finished. Exactly, it shows ready. That means we can lock it in. We don't need to flush anything now, because otherwise it would indicate that to us. Exactly, and here we go. It's running smoothly. Yes, looks good. "22 seconds and now 36 grams. It's actually the perfect espresso. Now let's take a look. Looks beautiful. Nice crema. Wonderful. Just how I want this espresso. It is exactly how I know it. This is our house espresso, as it always is in all our tests. And it is simply perfect. So, now we can go to frothing the milk. As you can see, you also have a hot water outlet. This is classic for dual boiler machines, and you have, as you will soon see, an incredible amount of power. As you can observe, we swiftly transition out of the rolling phase, which is a crucial step in our process. This allows us to achieve a beautifully concentrated foam that is not only visually appealing, but also enhances the overall texture and quality of the product. The rolling phase is essential as it helps in evenly distributing the elements, ensuring that the foam is consistent and stable. By carefully managing this transition, we can create a foam that is both rich and luxurious, providing a delightful experience. This meticulous attention to detail in the rolling phase is what sets our foam apart, making it truly exceptional. As you just saw, the machine has incredible steam power, and you can froth wonderfully with it. You can regulate the pressure a bit over the boiler temperature, which we can set via the PED control. Because with these levers, I find that fine-tuning the pressure doesn't work as well as with knobs. The advantage, however, is that you can easily turn the lever in all directions on this machine, no matter how I turn it. I can control the pressure a bit by not putting the lever in the locking position, but just pressing lightly or a bit harder. But as I said, personally I find the knobs a bit easier, and in conclusion, let's return to the summary. Does the machine have advantages? Does it have disadvantages? And for whom is it possibly suitable? It is not exactly cheap. It costs about, I believe I saw it recently, for 22.89 euros. That is of course a hefty price. However, in contrast to other machines, you do get a lot of technology for it. The disadvantage is, of course, the long heating time, due to the dual boiler with the E61 brew group. It is essentially an old technology, in this case combined with a new technology that is behind it. But ultimately, the E61 brew group is a good technology, an old technology, and I recently saw somewhere online that the end of the E61 brew groups and dual boilers was being foretold, which I cannot quite understand, because the advantage of such machines lies simply in their extreme durability. We have the original Verima here, which dates back to 1964, meaning it is over 60 years old, and with care, it could last another 60 years, and then some, and probably even another 60 years. You always have to replace a few things from time to time. Sometimes a small seal here, sometimes a little spring there, but these are not major dramas. And as I said, with this one, you also have the rotary pump, which will probably last another 60 years.
And therein lies an advantage of this machine, and especially this machine. It is extremely solidly built with excellent materials. It is well made, and if you take care of it a little, it will certainly last forever. You will probably be able to pass it down. Another advantage of this machine, in our opinion, is the intelligent control, the temperature control, and the ability to influence many parameters. We have already mentioned some of them. Who is it for? It is certainly for people who enjoy this classic design. It is for people who want to do a bit of craftsmanship. However, you do need to learn how to set up the coffee correctly. It is certainly not one of those machines that are currently coming onto the market that promise to make an espresso easily, without you having any knowledge of it. You do need to engage with it a bit, based on our experience. It simply is also fun. Another advantage of the Mechanika Max is that you have a German contact person. You can send the machine directly to ECM, as they have their own service and repair workshop. And with that, we come to the end of our video. In conclusion, for us personally, it is a great machine. It is simply fun, beautiful, classic, has its pros and cons, but it delivers what you want, namely an excellent espresso. And we also hope that you enjoyed our contribution. We appreciate every like, every subscription, and an active discussion on our channel. I thank you for watching and wish you all the best until next time. Drink delicious coffee. Thank you very much.